Hi, I'm Tim. Join me in this video as I go through 12 model airplane crashes that I did with my airplanes and lessons learned from them. Let's get to it. This video is being filmed in August of 2022. Over the past 3 years, I've been very busy with my RC model airplanes. I've designed 15 model airplanes. I've converted 8 Guillows kits to radio control flight, and I've also built 9 kits. So I've had a lot of chance to build, fly, and just learn from that. In the course of this, I have crashed some of my models. And so what I'd like to do in this video is show you those crashes and give an explanation of what I think the lessons learned were from each of those crashes. Each of the airplanes that I describe, there'll be a link in the description if you want to see details on it, to get plans from any of them on how to build them. So this video, I'll introduce a model, but I'm not going to tell you how to build it, just the background, why I did it, and then we'll go to the video of the flight and you'll see the crash from that flight. As always, thank you for likes and subscribes, as well as super thanks. They help the channel a great deal, and I do appreciate your time with that. The first model I want to discuss is probably my most ambitious project for this time. It was a Stevens Aero Pietenpol Sky Scout, and this was a large kit, pretty close to a 5-foot wingspan. Had to make sure that it would fit inside my car. I've built many of the Stevens Aero kits. They are perfect kits. There is a detailed instructional manual, very high quality balsa. They're a lot of fun to build, and in all of my experience, they come out looking great and fly great as well. So the Sky Scout was on my to-build list for a long time. I got it, put it together. It was a fairly long process, but I came out with a fairly good model. I think it looked fine. Electric powered, plenty of power. Took it out for the field for the first flight. It flew quite well on the maiden flight. It flew well. However, it crashed on landing. You'll see that I did the classic slow down on the base to final turn. I stalled out and spun in. So that was that, and I'll describe that in the video. I brought it home. There's a little bit of damage to the wing that I had to fix. Took it out for a second flight, and it just was like a transformed airplane. It was rough on the takeoff. It just wasn't behaving well at all. Resulted in a second crash after that as well. So big disappointment. I really wanted that airplane to fly. I'm not sure in my heart of hearts what went wrong with it, but let's look at the video and then we can have some further discussion at that time. Here is the maiden flight of the Pietenpol, the takeoff down the runway, handling pretty good. Not much trim required, and I was very happy. It was flying well. These are just some passes along the field. Very comfortable flying it, keeping a little bit low for the camera, but a well-flying aircraft, no odd sounds from the engine or vibrations. I'm just happy having it fly along. Now here we are coming up for the landing. I'm about where I should be, getting a little bit low here, turning. So to make the runway, I pull up the nose, do not have enough power. Classic stall spin in. Now here's a second takeoff, and right from the beginning, the plane's fighting me every step of the way. So we get it airborne, I get the wings sort of level. The engines are making funny sounds, but I was just fighting this all the way around. And you'll see here in a moment, it just goes off in the distance and I lose it. I really don't know for sure what happened. The next plane crash I'd like to discuss is my Sig Manufacturing Deperdussin. Sig Manufacturing is a historic model airplane company, and they have a series of models called Pioneers of Flight. It's the Demoiselle, the Deperdussin, and the Antoinette. They're very lightweight models designed for indoor electric flight. As a matter of fact, they were designed for the old geared brushed motors, so they're very lightweight. But I like these types of aircraft, so the Deperdussin was always on my list to build. So I built it. We'll take a look at some of the build as we go into the crash on takeoff here. The kit is very good. The SIG kits are superb. However, to make the plane very lightweight, it's pretty flimsy construction. It's not a robust construction, because I think the model is pretty much designed to fly indoors in larger flying areas. As part of their construction, the wings have a 2 balsa spar arrangement where the ribs are built right over the spars. It's lightweight, but it's not strong, and warps can creep in, especially if you apply any sort of heat shrink covering on that. The model is 3 channels. It's elevator, rudder, and throttle. The real aircraft back in 1910, the Deperdussin, it was a French airplane, used wing warping, very common in those days for bank control. There's no wing warping on this, there's no ailerons, and you'll see in my discussion of lessons learned on the crash, do we turn with rudder or do we turn with ailerons? So in this case, when I took off, it was a beautiful day, and to take off, the plane just wouldn't turn. It was the darndest thing. The controls were set up properly, there was plenty of rudder on that. It just wouldn't turn. Had a fairly hard landing. There was significant damage on the landing, and that's what happened. To this day, I'm not quite sure what happened. My best guess is it was some sort of warp that creeped into the wing. Without ailerons, it's hard at those slow air speeds to turn. The rudder has not a lot of effectiveness. And I'll also show you the video of the Blackburn that I designed 10 years ago. That is a 1910 design airplane from the UK. Have a video on that in the description. That's 3 channels as well with elevated rudder. That flies fine with a very similar wing layout. So sometimes things happen, but we'll take a look at the Deperdussin crash on takeoff next. Here's the maiden takeoff of the Deperdussin, and I'm trying to turn left like I always do, and it's just caught me by surprise. It's going right, can't lift up the wing. Here's a second look at that same takeoff. I think it was a warp of some sort in the wing. I don't know. The rudder worked, but there was a fair amount of damage. This is the Blackburn. This is my own design using a similar control setup with just rudder and elevator. It's a little bit of a windy day, but the model handles fine. This is the same control setup as I was using the Deperdussin. See, with a little bit of a headwind, the plane's under full control. It basically hovers into place. So those are the Deperdussin and the Blackburn, my 2 early aviator experiences. Another one of my design projects is I converted foam gliders to radio control flight. I think this is something fun to do. A lot of other people have done it. And there are basically 2 types of these Walmart, dollar store foam gliders you can get. You can get small ones or you can get big ones. Now I'm still on the lookout with the wonderful help of my lovely wife for the larger foam ones at a Walmart. I think they come and go, supplies come in. If they show up, fine. If they don't, so be it. However, these smaller ones are pretty common on Amazon. They come from China. They're small gliders, maybe about a 16-inch wingspan, not a large size. So I challenged myself to convert these to radio control flight. The 2 approaches I did was to keep the weight as light as possible, and the other one was to add a little bit more power and hopefully fly through speed. The first one you'll see with the Park Zone electronics, the goal is always with the Park Zones to keep it under 3 ounces, the same controls I use for my Guillows models. That flew pretty good. It was a handful. I flew it in the office park near where we live. It flew fine, but you were on the sticks all the time. That was rudder and elevator. The other one that I saw at a dollar store bought, similar layout, but I decided to put a larger engine on it. It was just simply too heavy, the battery and equipment for that small wing area. This is the first flight attempt. Add power and give it a push. Sort of, maybe, kind of, almost flew, and spins in. Second try, a little bit faster this time, and it just was out of control, and I cut my losses after this. As you can probably tell, I like the early flyers with the Deperdussin and the Blackburn. Well, I did another one at Antoinette. So what I tried to do with the Antoinette was to make the model out of foam board. Okay, and the challenge on that was the triangular fuselage of the Antoinette. It was a little bit tricky to do, but it came out quite well. So I built the wings out of 3 16-inch foam board as well as a fuselage, a little bit of a tight fit, and I wisely decided to use ailerons and elevator for this. There's no rudder for the turning, and there was plenty of power. The mistake I made on this was when I was building this, I decided to keep the gap between the 2 wing halves like on the real Antoinette, and I used skewers that you use for like a barbecue to connect the 2 wing halves. That works sort of with a very lightweight model with the speeds that my model flew at. It flew pretty fast. There simply wasn't enough strength to hold the wing together. If I had butt glued the 2 wings together, I'm sure it would have been strong enough. Didn't do that. There was a gap. The model flew. On the first turn, I could hear a little crack, and the wings folded. The model went down. So just As always, make sure your wing dihedral joint is strong. I failed to do that on this model. Really not much to say other than what I mentioned before. Good takeoff. The plane flew fine. It's got tons of power. You can see it just moving right out, going fast, obviously at a non-Antoinette speed, but then you can hear this kind of crack. The wings folded in half and it just went straight in. So that was that. Here's the same view of that with a slow motion look at the wing fold and crash. Luckily, I could see where the model went down and went and retrieved it. This is what it looked like. Really not much. It's a fragile model. When it goes in like that, not much to put back together. My next experiment with the foam board was a model of an F4 Phantom. So nice low stress project. So I built it out of foam board, came out pretty good. With the swept wing and the long nose, I had to carefully locate the center of gravity. It had the correct center of gravity, but what had happened was the nose was fairly far forward from the center of gravity. All the wiring was okay. The battery was close to the aft end of the wing for center of gravity, so it balanced out. The problem is with that long distance from the center of gravity to the nose, as the nose went up and down at launch, remember at low air speeds, the elevators have essentially no effect because there's no airflow or airspeed on the model. If you can take off and move along, it goes well. But with the F4, the minute that nose dropped any amount at slow speeds with a hand launch, there's no landing gear, I had no airflow over the elevator to allow me to pitch up with the nose. I just couldn't do it. So this is probably the shortest RC airplane flight I've had in my life. It's about 2 seconds. I'll show it to you twice. I'll show it to you in real time, and then we'll show it slow motion. And I think you'll see that it was a kind of not brilliant way to design an airplane. But we learned a lesson because I'm going to tell you after the F4 video a way to fix that with an F-22 model. Here's the flight, if you can call it that, and then a second look at the flight in slow motion. So this is my foam board F-22. It's completely made from 3/6" foam board. You notice the motor's right here with elevons. Again, a complete description of build with plans in the description. This is a good model. The learning point on this is the center of gravity is right where these wing halves join. To meet the center of gravity, the battery is put very far forward, but that's totally okay and fine. Notice how close the motor is to the center of gravity. So when this thing is hand launched, I know immediately I've got to pitch up to keep it from descending into the ground. The prop blast is right over these very large ailerons, so just the prop blast alone will make them effective at very slow air speeds. And there's not a heavy motor weight in the nose to try to pitch up and down. It basically pivots on the center of gravity. Now, it's a little bit twitchy in pitch. Also, you'll notice that the wing is completely flat foam board. There's no airfoil whatsoever, but that's okay. By having the model, the prop blast over the ailerons, very large control surfaces, close to the center of gravity, I have immediate pitch control over the nose. And you'll see in the hand launch, I pitch up, it climbs out, and then I sort it out. The model handles very, very well. Again, 3 channels with the elevons and throttle, and it looks like an F-22 in the air. It's a neat little model to have. So a difference between the motor layout between this and the F4 in front led to success on this. So I tried the first flight of the F-22 with a 2-cell LiPo. It just wasn't giving enough power. Here you can see I'm pulling up and it just skids on in. 3 cells, much different. You can see you get the nose up to get it flying. A little bit pitch sensitive, flat wing. I'm trying to sort all this out. But the model flies great. I think it looks fantastic in the air. And it's a great little project if you want a fun, different, good-looking, good-flying foam board model airplane with a flat wing. Here's a landing, it just hovers right in. Another thing I was curious about on this 3-year journey of designing foam board airplanes, because foam board's really easy to work with, I was very intrigued with the theory of a lift. And can you fly with a flat wing? Because obviously some of our smaller indoor models fly with a completely flat wing, no airfoil. The answer is you can. You saw the F-22, that is a flat wing. So I made a series of lightweight models using a Park 250 electric motor and a 2-cell LiPo, saran wrap, various ways to make it a lightweight covering, but a completely flat wing with a slight amount of positive incidence. And the models fly quite well. The small ones fly quite well. So on this one, there was a series of these flat wings that I did with low, high wings and so forth, biplanes. I want to talk a little bit about the hand launch, because these models, to save weight and time, do not have landing gear. You're going to have to hand launch it. You're either going to hand launch it on your own, which is okay, or if there's a fellow flyer at the field, you can have them do a hand launch. And the key to a hand launch is not to be like the Olympic javelin discus throw, to try to throw it as high as possible. That's going to lead to potentially too nose high and a crash. Rather, you just want to kind of push it forward, maybe a 20-degree incline, and just push it into the air. And that is probably the best way. You'll see this is an over-aggressive hand launch. It went up, looped around, and crashed in. So just a small lesson learned there.
Ready? Yep.
Continuing with my investigation of flat wing flyers, I had a very successful square wing flyer that I'll show you. It's a literally 20 inches square flat foam board with elevons. Flew very well. Seen some videos on YouTube, pictures and so forth of what I call a plank flyer. This is a rectangular foam flyer. And the one that I designed was about a 40-inch wingspan and probably about a 15-inch cord on the wing, completely flat with elevons and a prop up front, some vertical stabilizing fins. And I'll show you the video of the first one I did. I had too much elevon control because the elevons are coupled very close to the center of gravity, and it just started getting into a pilot-induced oscillation. I couldn't get out of it, and eventually the wings folded and it crashed. So back to the shop, didn't change any dimensions on the wingspan, still a flat wing, but I greatly beefed up the wing with carbon rods, and using the radio, I kept the elevons, of course, but I reduced the throw so it wasn't as much throw, put in a little bit of expo around the middle to try to sort things out. Lo and behold, again, my good friend Leo helped with the hand launch. We got a great hand launch, and the thing flew. It was one of the steadiest aircraft I've had in my life. I can't tell you how or why. It just flew like it was on rails, and we'll show you the video on that. This is a maiden flight of this plank flyer, and I just got into a pilot-induced oscillation. You can see the wings started to fold, and then it's all over. Second look at it in slow motion, just too much control authority from the elevons to just a short distance center of gravity, and in it goes. So back to the shop, make some repairs, a little bit stronger wing. Leo gives a great hand launch here, and it's like magic. It just is transformed to this wonderful, well-flying aircraft. It just was like it was on rails in the sky. Very, very happy to see this, followed by a very nice landing. As I mentioned, part of my design work over these past 3 years was taking Guillow's kits and converting them to radio control flight. This is the C3 Aranca that I did. There are kind of two types of Guillow's aircraft: the trainers like this, the high wing, or the low wing World War II fighters, the Zero, Spitfire, Hellcat, and so forth. For these trainer aircraft, and again, you can see a very detailed build brief of this. The goal is to keep it under 3 ounces total weight, and I use the Park Zone microelectronics. They're ideal for this. Keep the weight as far forward as possible. 3 channels with elevator and rudder. A lightweight 1/6" balsa for the tail surfaces. They really, really fly well. Now, I took this design approach to the World War II fighters, and I'm going to show you 2 crashes, the Japanese Zero and the Spitfire. First of all, I tried to use a Park Zone motor, which is a fairly not strong motor, keep the model under 3 ounces. There simply wasn't enough power to fly these World War II fighters. It didn't have enough power. The other thing I have found with the low-wing World War II fighters, the rudder is just not going to work for you too well with roll and turn control. You've got to put ailerons on the airplane. So with the fighters, we'll see this on the video. I added a more powerful engine. I also added ailerons, and to make it easy on me, through this experimental process, I used strip ailerons for the World War II fighter just to get the things to flying. So definitely heavier, about 5 ounces, a lot more power with a 2-cell LiPo, just regular batteries, but they flew pretty well. This culminated in my Guillows Hellcat build. Guillows has 5 of what they call their giant scale series, the Dauntless, Stuka, and the Hellcat. The Hellcat I've always liked. It's got great dimensions for a model, plenty of room inside for RC gear. Put on a fairly large engine, a 2-cell LiPo. I put actual ailerons in the wing, the normal ailerons, not strip ailerons, and the plane flew absolutely great. It was fast and responsive, but it flew great. I'll show you a video on that. The other video I'll show you on the Guillows is a Guillows Porter. Again, the Porter is a lot like the Aranca. However, these smaller models, if there's any error in the incidence, a little bit of warp that creeps in on the wing, or just something you may not even know, the Porter flew, but it was like the whole flight was crooked. It just like it was flying sideways. And I couldn't quite trim that out. Sometimes these happens with the smaller models. You get some thing that's a little bit off in the fin or whatever, and the Porter flew, but it was a lot of work to keep it flying. This is the maiden flight of the Guillow Porter. The model came in okay. It was under 3 ounces, so it's going to work for the Park Zone motor and equipment, but it just kept pulling to the left. I did not get a successful right turn until I landed. I don't know if there was a warp in the wing or a warp in the fuselage. I don't know, but it flew okay. I think the center of gravity was in the right place looking at this video. Certainly had enough power, and I think I got the final right turn just as I came into land, but not a great flying aircraft like, for example, with the Aranca. The Guillow Zero was a lot of work. It was actually 2 videos before I got it right. This was the Park Zone equipment, just not enough power. I'm trying to keep it under 3 ounces. It just, with that low wing, it just needed more power to fly properly. Finally got it back to the shop, put in a larger engine, 2-cell battery. Here it is there. This is still fiddling around with the ailerons. We did eventually get it to fly, but it was a fair amount of work. Ailerons are absolutely essential for these low wing motors and at least a Part 250 motor. Similar situation with the Spitfire. We eventually got that flying, but a similar path as with the Zero. I watch YouTube like everybody does, like you are now, and there are a lot of what they call annular wing aircraft. That means a wing that's a circle. It's a long-held understanding of aerodynamics. There's a lot of efficiencies with circular wing aircraft. The problem is they're very hard to construct. It's much easier in the real world of full-scale airplanes to just keep a regular straight wing. However, with modelers, especially with foam, we have the option of using a circular wing. So I took the Aranca C3, another one that I had, took off the wings. I was done flying with it, made a circular wing out of foam. Not super strong, model's getting kind of heavy, but the motor was all in place and everything. And I just thought, okay, let's give this a try to do it. And again, the F4 might have been the shortest flight. This is absolutely the second shortest flight. It just was unflyable from the get-go, crashed straight in, but sometimes these things happen. We had a good time with it, and you get to see the video coming up of this first and only flight. So I don't want to depress everybody with the crashes. Most of my models fly pretty good. I'm very happy with them. And I want to show you with one of my early foam board designs using the wing, foam board wing that you can make in 10 minutes. Again, the video in the destruction, I call it the Rocketeer. It's a profile aircraft. Yeah, it was 4 channels with rudder, elevator, strip ailerons with the throttle. The plane is very lightweight. The foam just flies great, and you'll see the plane literally levitates off the ground. Just a wonderful flying aircraft. And I covered it with a lightweight monocoat. I think it looks pretty good. So we'll end on a positive note with the Rocketeer flying, and then some concluding thoughts. Ooh. As always, thank you for watching this video and for watching other videos on my channel. It's great to share these experiences with other RC modelers. You're going to have crashes from time to time, and the important thing is not that you crash, but we learn something from it so we become a better pilot and maybe avoid a future crash next time we go out and fly. So thank you for joining me, and best of luck at your RC flying.